Welcome to All In for Estacada Schools. Joined by School Superintendent Ryan Carpenter, we'll be taking an in-depth look into the work, the data, the wins, and the fun that's happening every day in the Estacada School District.
Hey, welcome back to All In for Estacada Schools. My name is Ryan Carpenter, and I proudly serve as the superintendent for the Estacada School District. We've got a big podcast today as we really need our community's help. One, to just help us keep our doors open. Two, to be more focused on the quarantining procedures and how we can best work together as a team as kids come in and out of our school district this year. And three, we are short-staffed and we need people. So come alongside us, buckle up. We've got a big All In for Estacada Schools podcast today. I'm excited to have this conversation with our listeners. So let's fire away with that question so we can get right to work.
If you were stranded on a desert island, what is the one thing you would bring?
It goes without saying that if I was stranded on a deserted island, which by the way sounds pretty good right about now, I would definitely bring my family. That's an obvious question, I think, at least in most circumstances, but a deserted island with, I would assume this has all the amenities that I need. So I had no wants and or desires. I would just have my family and everything else there. So definitely my family is answer number one. But answer number two, I think I would still want to bring my cell phone because I still love my work. And I would want to continue to lead and support the Estacada School District, even on a far deserted island, via phone. So that's my answer to that question today.
Hot topics.
So I have two major hot topics that I want to have the opportunity to have a conversation with our listeners and our parents about today. The first and probably most important one is the quarantining. We had a tremendous first 2 weeks of school. I could not believe just how strong and vibrant and flawless the first 2 weeks of our schools ran out. Kids were welcomed. The energy and the excitement of bringing all kids back on class. Our teachers were ready. Our support staff was ready. Buses were on time. We were just crushing the first 2 weeks of school, and things were really going strong for us. This last week, we were hit with the COVID bug inside our community, which required the Estacada School District to begin to initiate its quarantining protocols. And I must admit that quarantining process, I think, happened sooner than we had hoped for as a school district. And I also believe that it caught a lot of our families unprepared for this quarantining process. We had such a smooth first 2 weeks of school, and so we all kind of settled back into, hey, this is starting to feel kind of normal. I'm loving this, to a week where COVID really ripped through our school district community and at schools. Now, I'm happy to tell you that at this point, people are doing okay, but last week we had 24 students who tested positive for COVID. We currently had last week 146 students that are in quarantine, and so they are now receiving their education remotely for 10 days. We also had 4 employees who tested positive for COVID-19, and we have 1 additional employee or staff member out in quarantine. And so last week was a very trying week for our systems. And I think it's important to really stay at the systems level. We know that there was some parent frustration, but we also know that we have some employee frustration due to some of our systems that need to be improved immediately. And of course, we don't see where our systems are weak until we test the systems. And I will tell you, last week, our quarantining systems had the opportunity to rev at full speed last week as we went through our quarantining protocols. And here are a couple of things that we, the school district, learned. We learned that it's taking too long for the school district to notify all family members per case. For example, at an elementary school, we had 4 students test positive. It took us roughly 3.5 hours per positive case to make sure that as we identified the positive case, drew the circle around the kids who were in the closest amount of contact, and then made personal one-on-one phone calls to each and every single family member, that was an inefficient use of our time, ultimately creating other areas and other systems to break because we weren't able to put the time into feeding and supporting those systems throughout the school day. Our great classroom teachers are also working extremely hard. And this is where I think it's important to note that this is not a people problem. This is a systems problem. Our teachers right now are doing incredible work. The relationships and the gaps that they're already closing in the classroom is incredible. They're going above and beyond the call of duty right now to serve kids in the classroom as well as serve kids outside of the classroom during the quarantining process. And we're only going to get better at that as time allows and as we work through some of the kinks inside our systems. But we need to commend our classroom teachers, our support staff, and our learning specialists for what they're trying to do to be a different model. We're serving kids in school, all while trying to provide educational opportunities inside the quarantining process. And there's some specific systems that we need to strengthen there, but it's not a teacher and or people problem. We're also aware that these 10-day quarantines are a significant inconvenience to our parents and families. And we knew that this was going to be a process that was going to be a challenge for us really during the summertime as we made plans. But it's even more clear that moving kids in and out of the school for 10 consecutive days is definitely putting pressure on our families as they return back to their normal life duties and try to find a safe place for their child to access their education during the quarantining process. And the school district has some systems that it needs to improve to support those families during that inconvenient time. And so I'm excited to at least share with you as I get started today that we see some breakdowns in the system, and we appreciate our families who are remaining patient with us as we work through this process. I have to give tremendous gratitude to our classroom teachers and our employees who just continue to work hard to serve and support your kid while we all see the systems inside our organization that need to be improved effective immediately. And I also need to give credit to our building principals and our building secretaries who are acting right now as first responders as we try to communicate as this pandemic enters and comes in and out of our school and our school system, and as it requires us to pull levers to make sure that we're safely keeping kids in school, safely keeping our school doors open, while at the same time informing families that per the Ready School Safe Learners guidance, we need to send them home for 10 consecutive days, which is a major educational impact right now. So here are some quick fixes that we're working on to support the systems. At the elementary level, we realized that one of the things that went so well for us last year during comprehensive distance learning was that when kids were in person, they had in-person teachers, and when they were out of school during the hybrid time, they had full-time online teachers. And so they could still access learning through a different teacher and through a different vehicle. This allowed our in-person teachers to focus on the kids who were showing up in person, and it allowed our online teachers to give their entire attention and focus to the parent and the child who was getting their learning virtually during that hybrid day. And so as we look at this, obviously when we made our plan to start this school year, we were really focused on serving and supporting all kids inside the classroom. And it was our hopes on paper that the classroom teacher could continue to provide that asynchronous and access to the lessons as they went through that process. we're seeing immediately right out the gate that work burden is real, and it's putting a lot of pressure on our classroom teachers and our building principals as we try to navigate with parents their ability to access the learning. Plus, just 10 days away from the classroom and 10 days away from your friends and 10 days away from all of these great activities that are happening in person is making a tremendous impact on the kid and their social growth, as well as their academic growth, and not to mention the burden that that's placing on our parents. And so the Estacada School District right now is working, and we're hoping to have a very fast system adjustment to be able to provide some more adult safety nets as kids come in and out of quarantine through the school year. We're going to be making some major procedural adjustments in order to support those children and those families and those classroom teachers as kids come in and out. And so we are going to be hopefully bringing some more certified classroom teachers on board inside our district to help support the ebb and flow of kids coming in and out of quarantine. So that is one adjustment I just wanted to share with our all-in podcasters that we're planning on making. We're using data and other areas that we see in the system breakdown in order to improve that. So I wanted to vulnerably share that we understand that our back to school opening plans have not been executed as perfectly as we had hoped they would. We're seeing system breakdowns. We appreciate your patience as you allow our organization to make adjustments to meet the needs of our children, to meet the needs of parents, and to meet the needs of our classroom teachers so that we can put together another successful school year. And it takes some failing forward to be able to make the right adjustments to put together a good comprehensive school year this year. And so I appreciate the patience. We're making the adjustments, and I am confident as we start making these tweaks, you're going to start to see a better product both in person and in quarantine learning in order to meet the needs of our kids and continue to close those gaps, all while supporting our hardworking teachers who are doing tremendous work right now. This is not a people problem. This is a systems problem, and we're going to fix that. The next major hot topic I do need to discuss with our all-in podcasters today is really the quarantine and the quarantine plan itself. It's becoming very obvious that kids are going to be frequently moving in and out of our school system all year long. Right now, we've got roughly 100-ish kids in quarantine. We've got about 20-ish kids who are positive with that. And I think that's going to fluctuate, but it's always going to be there. And so I need to just say this. Have a quarantine plan. Have a quarantine plan. Please make sure that you have a quarantine plan. I do predict that every child that is not vaccinated is going to have to come home for 10 days at some point through this school year. At least that's what the data is telling me now. I have 3 kids in this school district, and in 3 weeks, I've already had one child home for 10 days. And so I understand the inconvenience that sending kids home for 10 consecutive days has on a family. I get it. I'm a firsthand experience of it already this year. And so I just want to say again, and we've been trying to say this really since the summertime, but I think as summer was coming to an end and we were so excited for school to get started, and I'll even admit my own naivety, thinking that things were just going to get back to normal. And the first 2 weeks shared that with us. Things were just awesome. But I just got to stress over and over again that we have to have, each family needs to have a quarantine plan. What are you going to do if your child is sent home for 10 days? What is your plan? What is your plan if you have a positive case inside your house? What are you going to do with your children there? And the reason why I point out that specific situation is because that is a 20-day quarantine for the child. So let me rephrase this a little bit simpler. If you, the mother, is positive with COVID-19, then that positivity time frame is 10 days. Your child doesn't start their 10-day quarantining process until that 10 days is over. Now, I know that this may come as a shock to specific parents, but it's important to note that if there's a positive case in a household and there's an unvaccinated kid required to quarantine, then that 10-day quarantine period doesn't start until the positive infectious stage ends with the person who is positive. So if you're thinking about, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I will tell you what a few families have done already to make sure that the kid can get back to school or participate in their athletics or activities as soon as possible. And that is, if a parent and or someone else who lives in the household is positive with COVID, they're sending that child to either their grandparents' house or to a different person's house so that 10-day quarantine starts right away, different than having to wait 10 days for the positive case to be done for their quarantine period to start. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I can sense as I say this, people being like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Like, what the heck are we doing with the world right now? Like, I can feel that, and I get it. I completely understand the frustration. We all want to get back to normal. But I've also got to tell you, at the end of the day, I just want our schools to remain open and ready to serve kids in whatever capacity we can. I'm sure you've seen the news. Last week, Reynolds High School, the second largest high school in Oregon, closed its entire doors because of 4 positive COVID cases, which sent 2,700 kids home for 10 days. You probably saw our neighbor and friend, the Gladstone School District, closed an entire elementary school for 10 consecutive days because of 1 positive COVID case. Now, we don't want to close our doors. We don't want to send students home en masse. We're doing a really good job of identifying the positive case, identifying kids who were within 3 feet for 15 minutes or longer of that positive case, and sending those students home. We're tracking the data very closely. 6 kids are being sent home on quarantine for every 1 positive case. So while I would say Gladstone is averaging 426 kids for 1 case, right now we're at 6 kids for 1 case. And so what I just want to share with you just how detailed and how focused we are at trying to limit the disruption to the educational services, all while doing the best we can in compliance with the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidelines to keep our buildings, our employees, and our children and our communities safe through this COVID pandemic. And so kids are going to be going home for quarantine. You can count on that. Please be sure that you have a plan ready to go when you get that automated and or personal phone call from the school that your child is coming home from 10 days. Having a plan makes the shock factor less, makes the anger factor less. And so I just, to give you some keys to success, we are required by the state to send kids home for 10 days at this moment, subject to change later. Things change frequently in this pandemic, but right now it's a mandatory 10-day quarantine. We have to follow these protocols. We will potentially be sending your child home. And so to have that plan is mission critical right now. And that's where we can probably use the most help from you. So when you do get that phone call, you know what next steps need to happen on your end as we start making our systems better to support your child educationally on ours. The final hot topic piece I need to discuss today is really more focused on how the Estacada School District is going to notify families when the quarantining process is in place. Now, I told you at the beginning of this podcast that we're averaging about 3.5 to 4 hours per positive case right now. That's because our schools are making one-on-one personal phone calls, and sometimes it's difficult and challenging to reach people during the workday and to make contact with families, and it's taking a long time. Plus, parents, rightfully so, have a lot of questions and want more information that goes through. Unfortunately, I need to tell you that that's one of the systems that we need to make a change immediately. And I want to say that first and foremost because I need to announce today that we will not be making personal phone calls from this point forward to notify you that your child has been exposed and is required to quarantining. And the reason why I have to make that tough decision is because our 4-hour process and our one-on-one phone calls is not sustainable for the entire school year. We need to speed up this process really for 2 reasons. The first is we need you to get that information as soon as humanly possible so that you can execute your own family quarantine plan as soon as possible. And the sooner we can get that information to you, the sooner you can start making decisions on what's best for you and your family as you get ready to take your child back home for the next 10 days. Very important to note. The second reason is because we need our leaders supporting the learning in the classroom and supporting our teachers and supervising lunches and recesses and bus pickup and drop-off times. We can't keep spending this 4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours, just making phone calls. We need to do more than that in order to execute these high expectations we all have for kids. So if you're an all-in podcaster, you're hearing this first and foremost. Our schools are going to stop making personal phone calls to notify. We're in the process of starting to robotically or automate these notifications, and we're going to be providing you with FAQs, which is frequently asked questions, some spots to click on, and some areas to go connect with to help you as you create your own decisions of what you need to do next. And then, of course, we'll always be available in person if you have follow-up questions. But we believe that we should be able to shorten the time to get notifications to our families, as well as get our leaders and our support staffs to focus on the most important thing, and that's high levels of student learning inside the classroom. I do want to share again because data is important to us, and every time we make an adjustment, we want to measure that adjustment to make sure that that adjustment is doing what we want it to do. We experimented with some positivities at Clackamas River Elementary School late last week, and we had to quarantine 16 students. And with our new adjustment to quarantine 16 students took the school district 18 minutes to notify. And then we were able to work with families as they clarified further. And this ended up being a positive and productive adjustment at this point for our school district. So do not expect that one-on-one phone call to come your direction. We've changed our notifications. We've improved our notifications. So if you're if someone who's already had a kid in quarantine, you're like, yeah, that notification was terrible. I want to tell you, we've already made that adjustment and we've heard your voice, and we now have put more student-specific information for you in that notification. So you know what date they were exposed, you know what child, if you've got multiple children in our school district, you know what child we're talking about, and you will also know their return to school date, as well as the different resources of how to access your child's learning and where to find other resources inside our school district to support your kids. So this is a huge hot topic. I know that I probably went way too long and talked way too long, but the purpose of this is to dive deeper and understand the why of the big decisions our school district is making. And this week is a very big systems and organization adjustment week, and this is our why. So please help me tell this story. Agree with it or disagree with it. If you're going to wait to hold your opinions until you see the adjustments made, I respect all of that. But the purpose of this podcast is to talk deeper about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so I hope that these last 20 minutes provided as productive for you. Thank you. Hey, so we need our community's help in the worst way. We have a different crisis that we're faced with, and that is we are short people. Right now, like we talked about in the hot topics, people are coming in and out. That includes our staff members as well. We are down to the bone in bus drivers. We are below down to the bone in instructional assistants, paraeducators. We need help with our cooks and our custodian substitutes, cook substitutes. And so, hey, I asked you, like, if you're someone who has some time, maybe you're retired, maybe you used to be a log truck driver, maybe you have a CDL driver's license, maybe you know your way around a kitchen, or maybe you're just looking for a way to help and volunteer in your child's school. Like, we need our community's help right now. You should go to our Estacada School District website. You can see what's open, but we really need help in paraeducators. That's people working alongside our most vulnerable children and helping them get access to the general education classroom setting. We need help in substitute cooks. So when our cooks are gone out on quarantine and or just taking their deserved days away, we've got people who can step up and step in and feed an army of children as they get ready to learn for the day. The same goes for our hardworking custodians, and we need people to hit reset in the evening times to be able to make sure that we have a clean and safe school for kids to return to in the morning. And last but not least, we need bus drivers in the very worst way. So I just plead to our community and anyone else who is listening to this podcast today, the Estacada School District needs human help to execute a great school year this year. It's going to be a challenge, and we need everybody. It takes a village, and we need everybody. So please, if you have it within you, please go take a look and see if there's something that you can do to serve and support your local school district during this pandemic. Please help. Hey, thanks so much for listening to All In Podcast. I know this was a hot and heavy podcast. The school district, your school district, is in the middle of making adjustments. No different than in a big athletic event. It's the end of the first quarter, at least in my opinion, and we're making strategic adjustments to make our processes better, to make our service to you, the community, better, so that we can continue to have that best-in-class school district that we're all so very proud of. We're adjusting as we speak, and I'm very pleased and proud of our employees who are helping us in this big adjustment to support the teaching and learning and access for your child. So thank you very much. I also just want to say we're going to continue to look at the data and evaluate our time and resources. If there's a different way that we can better communicate the most important things occurring in our school district, we want to be able to make that adjustment as well. So after this podcast, we're going to continue to take a look at its listeners, its viewers, and its engagement, and we're going to reevaluate that as well and see if there's a different venue for us to be able to communicate what's going on inside your great school district. Hey, times are going to be challenging for us. There will always be ups and downs, ebbs and flows in a school year. It's a long year, and we've got a long way to go. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It's a great time to be raising your child inside a school district that is always making continuous improvements. Fire up, and thanks for being all in with us.